It's time for Prove All Things, a Bible discussion program on the Word of God. A panel of preachers will deal with your questions and comments. Prove all things, hold fast that which is good, abstain from all appearance of evil, and the very God of peace sanctify you wholly. No, don't tell him that.
Okay.
Bob's here giving me a great sermon idea. Have you already preached it out there?
Seemed like in the distant past, but I was thinking about preaching it Sunday night.
Oh my
here.
goodness.
Yeah.
All of the relatives you have out there up here will know I cheated and pulled one of your sermons.
I can almost guarantee that's not true.
Good evening, everyone. This is Prove All Things. Bob Hines, that other voice you're hearing from out in Crawfordsville, Indiana, is with us tonight, and he's given me a great idea for a sermon, but unfortunately he will have preached it twice before I can get to it. But we're glad to have him on. How's everything going out there?
Doing all right. Enjoying this pretty fall day.
Well, better enjoy it as much as you can, because come Thursday, it comes into a late fall day. My other panelist here is Alan McKee.
Good evening, John. Good evening, Bob.
How are you doing,
Hey.
sir?
I'm doing well.
All right.
Fine.
Well, it's good to be with all of y'all. If you've ever listened to us before, which I hope you have, you know that we're on two platforms. We're on Facebook and we're on YouTube. I don't know which one you're listening on, but I know that you can comment or grumble or ask questions or chat, whatever they call it, on both of them. And if somebody will tell us what it is you wish to know. We're here for Bible questions and comments. We're not trying to decide the politics of the world or come up with favorite recipes or discuss international relations. We're here to talk about the Bible, or religion. And you can like us on Facebook. You can share it with your friends. You can subscribe on YouTube. You know all about that. The program's brought to you by the High School Road Church of Christ, 3103 North High School Road in Indianapolis, Indiana. You can also telephone. Remember, telephones. 317-257-3000, and we'll get you on the air with your dulcet tones on the air.
Is that like YouTube without pictures?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Let me see here. I'm forgetting where I am. I trust everybody's all right. Here we got a question written in. We got anybody over there yet, Dave?
Not yet.
What? They're not mowing the lawn.
We have people watching.
They're not mowing the lawn tonight. In the story of the soils told in Matthew 13, 1 through 23, would you consider the possibility that a single person could be represented in each individual soil type, culminating in the fourth soil type, which represents a faithful Christian? Is it possible? I think I read that before we went on the air and I couldn't understand it, but I think what he's saying is, here's an individual who goes through progressively through the four different soil types and ends up being a faithful Christian. Is that possible, Bob?
Well, I'm kind of like you. I'm glad. I know the person spoke, but I'm glad you interpreted, because I wasn't sure what what was shaken on this particular one. I suppose that that's possible. The Lord seems not to be stressing a process, though, as much as it is for different kinds of people or for different kinds of responses. And it does look like the wayside progressed to the stony. It looks like the wayside, that was the end of it, that sort of thing, when the devil took away. That was I hadn't thought, maybe I ought to think about a progression, but it looks more like four different. My first impression is it looks like four different responses to the good seed.
Well, and the interesting part is it says that in each one of them that they failed. For instance, they're in where was I? Matthew 13. There in the seed on the stony places, they had no deepness of earth, and the sun was up, they were scorched. They withered away, whereas the seeds by the wayside, the fowls devoured them up. It doesn't look as if there was a second chance in those things.
Looks like there was a stop with each one until you get to the one that bore fruit.
Yeah. It is true that you can be forgiven and you can have rejected the Lord if you're willing to repent and come back. Let me see, I had that here. Matthew 21. What think ye, a certain man had 2 sons, and he came to the first and said, Son, go work today in my vineyard. He answered and said, I will not. But afterward he repented and went. That's there in that account, that parable, but it's not in Matthew 13. And so it would be pushing Matthew 13 to push it to a meaning that's not there. If you want to talk about the opportunity of repentance, you can go to a lot of other passages. This was just one I happened to think of. What do you think, Alan? Dead air, Alan. Come on, dead air.
I know. I got my brain spinning in circles right now.
Oh, well, you were looking up something.
I was,
I heard
so
those keys clacking over there.
I was distracted for a moment. But no, I think it's got to be different soils. I mean, the example even describes different soils, and the parable even describes different soils. And I think that, could a man move from one soil type in his heart to another? Technically, yes, probably could.
Well, you'd have to use other accounts to accomplish it. You're not going to do it with this one.
Yeah, you're not going to do it with this one. This one is, to my mind, is talking about that first receipt of the word. That first receipt of the word, not your 10th, your 15th, your 20th time. It's that first receipt of the word, and it's either going to fall on good soil, or it's going to fall on some of this lesser quality soil, and be affected that way.
Alrighty. Let me go on here. Rate these 3 choices in order of importance to a Christian: loyalty, service, and faith. Please explain your answer. I'm going to let you start, Alan. Your head maybe it's not buzzing yet.
I will say faith. Simply because the Bible tells me that without faith it is impossible to please Him. And referring to God. And so faith is required. You're not going to have loyalty. I think that was one of the choices, right?
Yes.
How are you going to have loyalty if you have no faith in the person you're supposedly loyal to?
Yeah.
It's you have faith first and then loyalty. I think there's a progression. And then what was the third element?
Service.
Service. Once again, if there's no faith in that person,
James 2, faith without works is dead.
faith without works is dead. And, but what about works without faith? Well, again, works without faith is useless.
That's the sort of thing that the Jews tried.
Yes.
What do you think, Bob?
John, how was the question posed? Are those better, or is it importance?
In order of importance to a Christian, loyalty, service, or faith.
Yeah, I have a little trouble with saying that they're about importance. I think it may well be, as Alan you described, that one can follow another, but that we might call it the elementary principle, I guess, is the beginning of it. But when you look at virtues, I'm tempted to say that they're all equally important. It's just they come at a different time. And I was thinking of the list in 2 Peter 1. Add to your faith virtue, to virtue knowledge, to knowledge self-control, to self-control perseverance, godliness, to godliness brotherly kindness, to brotherly kindness. For if these things are yours and abound, notice the plural, if these things are yours, suggests that they are of, if you don't like the word equal, they are of importance. They must be a part. Now, it may be true that faith leads to loyalty and to service, as you described. Faith without works is not anything. But it might be where they start that's important, and then how they proceed, something like that. I hope I'm not being too picky
I don't think so. I dislike any of these attempts to establish a ladder, if you will, or a progression in our service and our life with the Lord. And I drew that a little bit from Galatians, the 5th chapter. He says in chapter 5, verse 19, the works of the flesh are manifest. And he goes on to name, of course, you know what he names: adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lasciviousness. And the point I usually try to make about that is that the word works there is plural. And therefore, you don't have to do everything in that list in order to be guilty of the works of the flesh. You know, somebody might be proud of the fact, well, I never did witchcraft. I did idolatry and did adultery, but I didn't do witchcraft. It's plural. But if you drop down to verse 22, it says the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness. And the word fruit there is singular. So that you can't say, well, I did some of these commands. I was loving. Wasn't particularly long-suffering. Wasn't particularly temperate. But I was loving. And therefore I qualify. No. The fruit of the Spirit is all of those qualities. You can't say one is more important than the other, or one is at the top of the list and the others follow along later. They're all important, and you can't say you have the fruit of the Spirit without them all.
Yeah. You might argue that some have greater consequences, it seems, but even there, you better be really careful, because they all are being measured by the Lord as to how we live.
Yeah, some of them have greater consequences. For instance, if you commit murder, there's a good chance you're going to spend a good part of your life in jail. Or if you're a drunk, you may well ruin your life, lose your family, lose your job, and so forth. They have different consequences. You might be able to get away with some of those and nobody know. But in terms of our relationship with the Lord, We don't have to commit all of those sins in order to be guilty of the works of the flesh. He says, of the which I tell you before, as I've told you in time past, that they which do such things, not all of those things, but such things, shall not inherit the kingdom of God. So,
Yeah.
so it's not, these are not things you can codify as this is number one, A, B,
Yeah.
C. They're all a part of being a Christian.
Yeah, what you're saying there, you sound a whole lot like James 2. He who said, "Do not commit adultery," also said, "Do not commit murder."
Yeah, exactly.
If you do not commit adultery, but you do murder, you have become a transgressor of the law. So to speak, and so do as those who will be judged by the law of liberty.
You don't have to do both of them to be a transgressor. One will
Matter of
work
fact,
just fine.
that chapter begins with the sin, being a respecter of persons.
That's right.
Just a simple thing, and
That's
he goes on to these other matters.
That's a good point. All right. How we doing, Dave?
Okay.
You know, I'm going to give Dave a plug. Oh, you don't want a plug? Oh, you need a plug, Dave. Dave put it on Facebook today. He's been working on a podcast. I have had collected back in the deep dark past a lot of cassette tapes. You remember cassette tapes? They were the ones right after the 8-track of preachers and their sermons. And he is cleaning those up because, you know, all those cassette tapes had a bunch of hiss on them and all that sort of thing. He's beginning to clean them up and put them on his podcast. And I think, didn't you have one? He just started, so don't expect to see thousands there yet. I think he's got 4, don't you?
I have about 30, but
Already on the podcast?
well, it depends on how you look at that.
Oh my goodness.
But I put the entire 1999 High School Road lectureship on, and it shows up as one, but there's all of those lectures
Oh
on
my
one.
goodness. Oh my, was Bob speaking in 1999? You're on, Bob.
He had the as a matter of fact, I know he had the speech on Jethro, and it was the last speech of the lectureship.
Ooh, Moses' father-in-law. You know, he put one of my dad's on that he found. Have you got some others, my dad?
That's the only one so far.
Okay. And he's got one by Harry Lewis, I think, wasn't it? No? Who was that other one? It was somebody else. Who was it?
There's one by Keith Sharp on there.
Yeah,
There's
Keith, and then one by Johnny Edwards.
Johnny Edwards, and there's one by Dad.
Ooh.
And there's more to come. I can only work on 1 or 2 a week.
Okay. But anyway, it's called what?
Word and Works.
It's on
It's on Podbean.
on Podbean. Word and Works is the site. So, but anyway, you might listen to that when you got a chance. You can hear a bunch of preachers that are long gone. Bob, not you, not me, but a lot of those other guys are long gone.
My demise has been somewhat overstated.
Yeah, I got to talking the other day about. I got to thinking that I've been preaching lately on continuous cleansing, which I haven't preached on at High School Road in over 20 years. And so some of them were beginning to ask me, said they were hearing it from people and so forth. So I decided to preach on it. But one of the points I made in the lessons is that I did debate this in the past, as well as some other subjects. And then it suddenly began to occur to me that all the guys I debated are dead now. I'm beginning to feel a little nervous. So, anyway.
It's got to be near 40 years ago.
Well, I know. I'm going to have to find some young guy to debate so he'll outlive me maybe. All righty. We'd like to hear from you. Bible questions or comments, call us. Which elder would be most likely to step in front of a bullet for you? Have you considered, Bob's an elder and Alan's an elder here, I am. Have you considered the speed of a bullet? Yeah, they're pretty fast. Would you or could you ask him to? I don't think I'd have time. And Alan, he's getting old. He wouldn't be able to jump up in front of me if I was preaching.
I wouldn't, yeah.
And I, with my knees, I definitely couldn't. What kind of a question is that? You know, we did have an odd visitor at church last Sunday.
Yes.
We have a lot of odd people that show up at High School Road. I don't know if you do out in Crawfordsville, Bob. You only have serious, dedicated people, I'm sure, who are above.
I'm the oddest. I think they might say I'm the oddest one of the bunch. I don't know.
Oh, well, I'm sure they're all above average. But anyway, this fella walked in. I think he was carrying two backpacks.
Yep.
Wearing one, carrying one, and walked all the way around the building. I thought he was kind of looking for a seat. You know, we don't have so big a crowd, you can't find a seat. And anyway, then he walked out of the building, and everybody's scared to death that he was going to bomb us or shoot us or something. Mm-hmm. But I think he was just a crazy guy. And I've had experience with them and been one of them many times, so I wasn't that alarmed. But now that he's asked this question about stepping in front of a bullet, I didn't see Alan jumping out of his seat to help me there.
True enough.
Actually, I'm glad for that question. When you started saying that, I thought the question was going to be which elder is most likely to shoot you. That's
yeah. I got you. Well, from all the shootings that I've seen that have gone on in churches, I don't think anybody's got time much to jump in front of anybody.
You've seen a lot of shootings in churches?
Well, in the newspapers and so
okay,
forth.
okay.
I've seen the reports. And so I don't think that happens that often. And I would think that there would be other people to try to protect besides an old preacher. What? What?
I don't know what your questioner is asking. Perhaps he is implying that there is no reason for security, because you hear a lot these days about security at churches and things like that. Maybe that's where he's going with that question. Do you really need security at churches, or is it just not going to work? I don't know.
You got security out there in Crawfordsville, Bob?
Nobody's confessing they're packing heat, if that's what you mean. That doesn't mean it's not so.
Yeah, but like most of us, we'd be fumbling around and probably shoot ourselves in the foot in the process.
Yeah.
But have we got security at High School Road?
Yes, we do.
Well,
we actually have a security team.
we do?
Yeah, how is it you didn't know? I know I told you about this.
Nobody tells me these things. We've got a team?
Sort of informal, yes.
Is there
but
a captain or what?
yeah, you're looking at him.
You mean that state trooper is not the captain?
No, he's one of the team members, though.
Oh, all right.
We've got an anonymous question.
Okay, let's hear it.
From someone that knows my phone number.
Okay.
How about a Bible question? Explain how the scapegoat fits into the example of Christ's sacrifice.
The scapegoat. Okay, Bob. How does the scapegoat fit it to the example about Christ's sacrifice?
I'm I'm not sure that there is a New Testament passage that, is there one that uses scapegoat as an application? I understand it's in the Old Testament as a part of. Is that where?
The closest I think you could come to it is in Hebrews 13, where he says, the bodies of those beasts whose blood is brought into the sanctuary by the high priest for sin are burned without the camp. Wherefore Jesus also, that he might sanctify the people with his own blood, suffered without the gate. Now that's not the scapegoat per se, but I believe that process was in the Day of Atonement, where some of their sacrifices were taken outside of the city. It's not the scapegoat, but anyway.
Yeah, and I couldn't think of any. The New Testament reference, I'm sorry, the Old Testament reference that seems to be referred to in practice that's referred to in the New Testament, I thought it was from 1 Corinthians 5, even Christ our Passover is sacrificed for us. The Passover is used that way, but I'm not sure what about the scapegoat.
The Day of Atonement, I'm trying to think of whether it's mentioned. Somebody knows more will be sure and tell us. Alan, is that you?
I don't know that it would be me. I'm looking at
The text about scapegoat,
Okay.
it doesn't actually say scapegoat, but it's come into our terminology that way. This is in Leviticus, the 16th chapter,
Okay.
and there it says, starting in verse 7, he shall take 2 he-goats and present them before Jehovah at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And Aaron shall cast lots on the 2 he-goats, one lot for Jehovah, and the other lot for a complete removal. And Aaron shall bring the goat on which the Jehovah's lot fell and offer it for a sin offering. But the goat on which the lot fell to be the complete removal shall be presented alive before Jehovah to make an atonement with him, to let him go for a complete removal into the wilderness. So there is the law about the goats. Now, how this ties into Christianity would be, frankly, pure speculation on my part. I mean, obviously, you have one goat that is being sacrificed as a sin offering. It is intended to be a propitiation for sin, and the other goat is designated for a complete removal and is sent into the wilderness. Now I understand, of course, Jesus Christ is our sacrifice and our propitiation, but who becomes who do we point to and say, oh, there is the removal goat that was turned loose in the wilderness? I don't know that we can point to any New Testament figure for that explanation.
The both goats there in Leviticus 16 were apparently regarded as a single sacrifice for sin. You have those New Testament passages where it says that God had laid on him, on Jesus, the sacrifice, the sins of us all.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you think that's referring to this at all? Don't jump in there, fellas.
Hey,
I'm hard pressed to say that that's the case. I mean, this is, I don't see how this ties in exactly, other than, again, that is a good point, that both of these animals are a sacrifice for sin. And the one animal is killed, and the other animal is driven out of the camp. And again, maybe both are in a way symbolic of the Lord, because Jesus was sacrificed. Obviously, he was put to death. He was also driven out of the camp.
Okay.
And so maybe there is some connection there that I'm not quite fully grasping.
All right, Bob, you've been studying here a while. What do you think?
Well, I was thinking that the bulk of what's said in the New Testament with regard to this matter of
The Old Testament offerings for sin is not a comparison, but it's a contrast. In Hebrews 10, every priest stands ministering daily and offering repeatedly the same sacrifices, which can never take away sins. But this man, after he offered one sacrifice for sins forever, sat down at the right hand of God. That's not, if I understand that correctly, would you agree that that's not so much it's more a contrast than anything else, where there were things that couldn't do, but can be done through the sacrifice of, let's see, that Hebrews 10 at verse 10, by that will we have been sanctified through the offering of the body of Jesus Christ once for all.
Yeah.
The contrast is between repeated and only once, between animals and the Son of God.
If I can't find that expression where they laid on him. I can't find it, but I would assume that you would be really pushing it to say that definitely applies to the Day of Atonement. It might, but there might be many other of those offerings for sin that were atoned by the blood of the blood of Jesus. I'm grabbing too many things all at once here. And you have, hang on just a second. Let me find passages. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, 1 Peter 1:19 doesn't deny it, but it says, for as much as you know that we were not redeemed with corruptible things as silver and gold from your vain manner of life received by tradition from your fathers, but with the precious blood of Christ as of a lamb, not a goat, a lamb without blemish and without spot. So the animals that were sacrificed on the Day of Atonement, I think they were both goats, weren't they?
I think that's what Alan read.
Yeah, they were both goats, and they weren't little goats. They were, they were mature goats. Whereas the passage as it speaks of Jesus' sacrifice, is describing him as a lamb without blemish and without spot. So I just don't know if you can find that reference to the scapegoat in the New Testament. So quit looking, Anonymous. Try to understand it in the Old Testament. I have read and studied about that scapegoat for quite a while. Most of the commentators, as far as I can tell, are trying to study it themselves and see everything that they can find about it. But anyway, what?
Gerald responds with John 1:29.
Somebody read that. John 1:29, I presume in this context. John 1, goodness gracious, one of you guys is bound to beat me there.
The next day, John sees Jesus coming to him and says, "Behold the Lamb of God
Who takes away the sin of the world."
Yeah, so it's talking about a lamb.
Talking about a lamb.
So it's not, I don't know if you can find a reference to The only reference you have to goats is there in Matthew 25, where it's the sheep are on one side and the goats are on the other. Which, I don't know whether that says what the Lord thought of goats or what, but anyway. Okay, thank you, Gerald. What do you got?
I
Now
have
that John, I think that laid on him the iniquities of us all. I think that's Isaiah 53.
Ah,
From one of the description.
yeah, you're right. Yeah, okay. Go ahead, Dave.
Okay, we have a new topic on Facebook from Nathaniel. He asks, in Acts 2, would you say that the fire upon the apostle... Let me reread that. Would you say the fire upon the apostles while they spoke tongues was just metaphorical?
Yeah, the passage says it was. I'll let one of these other guys tell you that, but was it metaphorical? The fire on the apostles. I don't know exactly what metaphorical means, but
The Acts 2 says that there appeared to them divided tongues as of fire. One sat upon each one of them. Is that what you're referring to?
yeah.
That's the New King James, as of fire, not fire itself, but like fire.
Yeah.
I guess.
Well, the same thing is in the King James, which says.
Well, I wouldn't call it metaphorical.
Yeah, it's not metaphorical.
It's not metaphorical. There was apparently some physical
Thing
thing
there, or at least visible thing there, and it had an appearance like fire. It apparently was not fire, but it had an appearance like fire, but it was apparently some sort of visible manifestation of something, and therefore not metaphorical. Because when I think of metaphorical, I'm thinking about, something.
You run like a deer.
Yeah, or you're sly as a fox or something like that. Well, I don't mean you literally are a fox. I mean, I'm saying that metaphorically.
Yeah.
But in this case, this was not metaphorical. It was a visible manifestation. I don't know exactly what it looked like, other than it looked like fire. I've seen some fairly good representations, though, in some films and so forth that, kind of intrigue me. But the bottom line is we don't know.
And I don't think we have to know.
I don't think we have to know.
It did single out the apostles.
Yep.
And it did let the crowd know something happened here. So.
It sat upon each of them, so
What?
each one had a.
Well, if it were
manifestation.
metaphorical, it would have to be the fire is representing something else.
Yeah.
What do you think, Bob?
Mm-hmm.
Is there
I think you're right.
Is there a metaphor in the fire?
Doesn't seem to be the case just reading through it. It's talking about what it appears as rather than what it's like, if you will. So
Yeah. That was the tongues of fire, I don't think, were any part of the promise the Lord made to them about the reception of the Spirit. They're told to tarry in Jerusalem till they receive the gift of the Holy Spirit, but I don't think it ever mentions the tongues of fire as representing anything. Other than, like I say, just calling attention to something here's happened.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Because
Verse 12 says they were all amazed and perplexed, saying, whatever could this mean? That's what it's for.
there you go.
And I have your attention, please.
Yeah, how did we hear every man in our own tongue wherein we were born? Something happened here.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I got a question that I'll toss in, and that is this:
There's been a fellow, I've seen him on TV a few times with a commercial, and he's talking about the beauty of the world to come.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it's not heaven, he says, it's right here on earth. And he says that Jesus is going to come and he's going to set up a kingdom here on earth, and that death will be rare. He says that, it's not that people won't die, but death will be rare. Do you have any idea where he's getting that idea?
Well, Mormonism strikes me.
Oh yeah?
I don't know about the death being rare part, but they believe that the Lord's gonna, in premillennialism, it says that he's gonna set up a kingdom here on the earth. But usually those religions don't deny the event. The Jehovah's Witness, same thing, don't deny that there is a heaven, and that some, maybe not everybody, maybe not even all the Christians, will go to heaven. I've had Jehovah's Witnesses tell me they don't want to go to heaven. They just soon want to have their 40 acres and a mule here on earth. It always tickled me. My dad, I think, growing up, he had a tough life growing up, and they did have a mule, and followed that mule around plowing fields and pulling the ears off corn in the fall. And I think Dad was pretty happy to not have to do that anymore. So I'm not sure that's the idyllic lifestyle that everybody thinks it is.
See, I'm thinking he's pulling this idea
From Isaiah 65.
I saw a part of that. He doesn't say what religion he is, or that you can look him up on.
I know there's a website and you can look him up. I didn't catch his name. He's Dr. Somebody.
Oh.
And I'm trying to remember his name.
Probably got that doctorate from the Grace L. Whitney School of Theology.
Wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me.
I did see a part of that.
But I'm pretty sure he's pulling this out of Isaiah 65.
Huh.
And, starting in verse 17 there, for behold, I create new heavens and new earth. And the things before will not be remembered nor come to mind. But be glad and rejoice forever in that which I create. For behold, I create Jerusalem a rejoicing, and her people a joy. I will rejoice in Jerusalem, and I will rejoice in my people. And the voice of weeping will no longer be heard in her, nor the voice of crying be heard in her. There will not be an infant nor an old man who has not filled his days. For the child will die 100 years old, but the sinner who is 100 years old will be despised. And they go on from there, of course, but, and this is the Lion and the Lamb.
New Earth is in the New Testament.
Yeah, I know. This is very parallel to some of the writings of, it's apocryphal language, as I'm sure you're familiar with apocryphal language, and we see the same kind of language used in the book of Revelation.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway.
What do you think, Bob?
That's also the language that's what you're referring to. That's also
a part of Peter's description of the day of judgment and following in 2 Peter 3 about the new heavens and the new earth. But in the same context, it says all things will be destroyed. Well, rather than looking at a rebuilding here.
Yeah, the Jehovah's Witnesses argue for a recreation, I believe, and I think the Mormons do too, and some of the premillennialists, they're arguing that there'll be a recreation.
Yeah.
And at least some of them.
By the way, the passage in Isaiah 65 that's the one that ends with the wolf and the lamb shall feed together, the lion they will lie out together, which seems to fit the Cornelius account in Acts chapter 10 of Peter's vision, where that it's meant to be a figure to be understood as Jews and Gentiles and all will be together, referring not to the Lord's second coming, but to what he did with his first coming.
Yeah. I spoke on that a few weeks ago. Isaiah 2 and Isaiah 11 do the same sort of thing, but there it's come ye to Jerusalem, which is what Jesus was telling them. Tarry in Jerusalem till the power comes on you. So it's an accomplished fact. It's not something that we need to do at the end of time. All right, Engineer Dave, what do you got?
A comment on the tongues thing. Gerald on Facebook says, tongues symbolized speech and the communication of the gospel. Fire represented God's purifying presence, which burns away undesirable elements.
Okay. Fire, what did he say, symbolizes?
Something about the sun, wasn't it?
Symbolized tongues. The tongues symbolized speech and the communication of the gospel.
Tongues. I beg your pardon.
Fire represented God's purifying presence, which burns away undesirable elements.
Okay. The tongues, Gerald, when you say that the tongues were symbolic, you're really reaching pretty hard because they were teaching people with those tongues. 1 Corinthians 14 talks about the need for the tongues to teach. If there's nobody there that understands you speaking in Chinese, you need to find an inspired interpreter. So they weren't just symbolic, it was something real. And I appreciate the comment on fire, but if we were sitting here over a cup of coffee talking to one another, I'd probably ask you where you got that. It sounds nice, but where did you get that in the scriptures that that's what that was? Uh-oh, more coming in.
Gerald comments on, I think it's Alan's subject. He says on Facebook, Dr. David Jeremiah is the name you are looking for.
Okay.
He has taken a pretty deep dive.
He who?
Jeremiah.
Okay.
What is he? What is he? What sort of religion does he have? Is it just his? Is he a part of some denomination, or is there a church somewhere that he preaches for, or whatever?
I've seen his lessons on television every week with a great, huge church. I'm not sure what the denomination is, but it's purely just classic impossibility of apostasy, Protestantism.
So he's a Calvinist and premillennial, maybe, to boot.
Perhaps so, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
He's
well.
a preacher at the Shadow Mountain Community Church.
Where?
That I don't know yet. Hang on. San Diego, California.
San Diego. Okay, David Jeremiah.
It's affiliated, he says, with the Southern
Baptist Convention.
Really?
That's what this says.
The Southern Baptists?
That's what this says.
Most of the Southern Baptists are not premillennial, or didn't used to be.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, they sort of preach against some of the best books dealing with that are, by the way, from Southern Baptists. But anyway, David Jeremiah, Southern Baptist. All right, what do you got, Dave?
This comes from Facebook again. Jeffrey asks, John, you have had several debates. What got you into debating, and who were your mentors in the Brotherhood that debated?
Oh my gosh. Well, my dad. Most of the preachers I grew up around debated and were discussed the scriptures quite a bit. If you're asking about me personally, I did study that an awful lot. Was offered several scholarships to college in debate, and that's absolutely meaningless. It's like holding on to a trophy you got when you were in high school. But I felt and feel that it is an ideal way to present the truth, because so many times when you preach on it, you're really kind of sticking up a straw man and saying, this group believes this, and here you knock the straw man down. And if you've got somebody who actually teaches this, what you consider a false doctrine, there's a fairness to it. And a good Bible study about some of the debates I've had were some of the best Bible studies I've ever been around. And I'm speaking of the folks in the audience. I remember we debated a fella over south of Richmond, Virginia, years ago. My kids were, Engineer Dave over there was a teenager. My other kids were, young, about that age. And the debate was held in a hotel largely. And we debated 3 subjects, morning, afternoon, and evening. And in between those things, everybody in the crowd would, after each debate was over, they'd get their Bibles open and sit down. I know all the kids did. And they'd sit down and study and talk with one another. Mm-hmm. And I think that's good, because people think about it and you don't have an unfair presentation. The other fellow has just as much right to speak and present his viewpoint as you do. So I have found it profitable. I think I've seen people converted through it, and I have seen people a lot of Christians who are solidified in what they believe and warned off of some false doctrines. And it's gotten to where it's hard to get people to do that you disagree with. So, what?
Oh, he's asking the same question I've asked in times past. Why do you think we don't have as many debates as we used to?
Well, God, why don't you answer this?
Well,
I think it's one reason is that people don't in days gone by, they thought it was an honorable thing to do, and a helpful thing to do, and they treated each other to one degree or another with kindness, as they saw a great value in it. But now we live in an age where modern man, I heard a fellow say, the only thing he thinks is a sin anymore is to be judgmental.
Yeah.
That they think that arguing is not a nice thing to do. Just be sweet and accept everything everybody says.
Yeah, everybody's right on everything.
Yeah. Truth is a completely relative thing, rather than in time past where it was objective, if you will, and measurable.
What were you going to say, Alan?
Pretty much the same thing that Bob said, which is
there seems to be a casualness anymore about religion that was not there when I was growing up. People were serious about it. People would get serious and they'd want to discuss it. If you had a disagreement with someone over a Bible topic, they wanted to discuss. They wanted to, and some folks, would be very bold, if I can put it that way, would be very bold to try and defend their positions. And these days, you try and find someone who's ready to defend the idea of you don't need to be baptized in order to be saved, or once saved, always saved,
Yeah.
or any of the any of the doctrines that have been around for a while. Try and find somebody who will stand up and say, yes, the Bible teaches that we ought to have a pope and we ought to be listening to the pope.
Yeah. And it's really hard to find somebody in the denominations who will stand up for what they believe.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of our brethren who think we're going to get people to be Christians by being nice and just being friendly to them. They've lost the will. I think a lot of our brethren have lost the will to teach. But anyway, that's sort of where we are.
I think some of the greatest things I've ever learned have been here in hearing a discussion, because you get to hear something you don't hear anywhere else, and that is you get to hear the weak points and the strong points of each side.
Amen.
And then it's up to you to weigh them in the balances and proceed.
I've learned some of the arguments that I have made in the past were not valid. The debater I was debating never pointed out that I was a loon, but I figured it out and said, "Hey, I still believe the truth, but I'm not going to make that argument anymore because it's not legitimate." So you learn a lot. What you got, Dave?
I don't have much. He wonders, do you have any debates in the works for the future? And a reminder that it is 7:57.
Oh, was that him or you? Reminding that. No, I don't. I have said I think I could probably debate one more time. It's very consuming when you do it, or when I do it. You don't think about anything other than that prospect for 6 months. But I'd be willing to do it. But I'm nearing the end of that sort of sharpness, I think. And one thing, I can't stay awake that long. But Bob, what about the church in Crawfordsville? Where are you?
We meet at 419 Inglewood Drive on the east side of Crawfordsville. We are in the midst of a study on Wednesday night at 6 o'clock. We get to see Nehemiah rebuild the wall.
All right.
And this Sunday we'll meet for worship at 10:30 and then 6. We have a bulletin that you can see electronically, if you will, at the Crawfordsville Church of Christ is the website. And we'd be glad to study with you online or come to see us. We'd be glad to have you with us.
Hey,
Thanks for having me on tonight.
Have you got your sermon Sunday morning figured out yet?
Well,
no.
Sort of. I really, I was thinking about chapter after chapter after chapter about Moses in the Old Testament, but isn't it wonderful that you get a summary of Moses' life in Hebrews 11 in about 8 verses? And I was thinking just about refreshing myself with that on Sunday morning.
Well, Alan over here teaches Bible class Sunday morning, and he's just been telling us in Hebrews 3 a little bit about Moses and his position, so it works out well there. Mm-hmm. That's at 9:30 Sunday morning, 3103 North High School Road, the High School Road Church of Christ. Tomorrow night we're going to be meeting, and we're studying, I think we're still studying in Matthew 13, beginning to think about the 14th chapter, so we'd like for you to come visit us at 7:30, 3103 North High School Road. Sunday, Alan's teaching, 9:30 Bible class. We have Brother Andres Pong is teaching our Spanish folks. If you speak Spanish, come and listen to him. And then at 10:30, we're going to have a worship service, and again at 6 in the evening, another worship service. I appreciate y'all's participation tonight. Some good questions. And yes, I'd love to be able to discuss some of the religious differences that we have again. And but it doesn't seem like anything's on the prospect real quick and easy. So, if the Lord wills, we'll be back with you again next week. Good evening to you.